The cold void of space stretched endlessly before Captain Sartho. His ship, the Vroth Star, glided silently through the stars, the blackness outside broken only by the distant shimmer of a dying star. But Sartho wasn't looking at the stars. His eyes were fixed on the strange, uncharted object in the distance. A ship, floating alone in the emptiness of space. "Captain, you'll want to see this," said the voice of Ensign Doka from across the command bridge. He was staring at his console, his antennae twitching nervously. Sartho's eyes narrowed. "What is it, Ensign?" "It's a human warship," Doka replied, his voice filled with uncertainty. The words hit Sartho like a shockwave. A human warship? But humans had been gone, vanished. No one had seen a human ship in over 100 cycles. The last record of them had been erased from the galactic archives. "A warship, are you sure?" Sartho asked, his voice low, tinged with disbelief. Doka nodded, pointing to the ship on the main display. It was massive, dark, and oddly shaped, almost like it had been designed for battle in the depths of space. Yet there were no signs of recent activity. The warship appeared abandoned, its systems offline, drifting aimlessly. "It doesn't match any of the human designs we know," Doka continued, "but the architecture is unmistakably theirs." Sartho turned to his second-in-command commander, Rylus. "Prepare a boarding party, we'll investigate. If it's truly a human warship, we need to know why it's here." Rylus nodded and moved quickly to assemble a team. As Sartho watched his crew ready themselves, his mind raced. What could this ship be? Had humans returned to the galaxy? If so, why had they disappeared? Was this ship a relic of the past, or something far more dangerous? The Vroth Star approached the human ship slowly, careful not to trigger any security systems that might still be active. As they drew closer, Sartho could see the warship's hull up close. It was battered, scorched in places, like it had been through battles long ago. Yet it looked solid, unyielding. The colors were dark, almost black, with faded cryptic symbols etched into the metal. "Ready to board, Captain," Rylus reported, her voice steady but filled with a hint of excitement. "Let's move," Sartho ordered, his eyes still fixed on the ship. The time for questions was over. It was time to learn the truth. As the boarding party stepped onto the human warship, the silence hit them first. There were no crew members, no sounds, just the hum of the ship's dormant systems, the occasional flicker of dim lights that barely illuminated the dark halls. The air felt stale, like the ship hadn't been used in centuries. "This place feels dead," said Rylus, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't like it, Captain." Sartho held up his hand to silence her. He had the same uneasy feeling, but they had no choice but to continue. They needed to find out who owned this warship, and if there was any danger. The team moved cautiously through the ship, their footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. As they explored deeper, they came across what appeared to be the ship's control room. The consoles were cracked and old, covered in layers of dust, but they were still operational. Doka moved to one of the consoles and began fiddling with the controls. "I'm pulling up some old data. These systems are ancient, but this ship was active not long ago." Sartho turned toward him. "Active? But there's no one here." Doka hesitated. "That's the strange part, Captain. I'm seeing data, logs from only a few months ago, and there's a message." He turned to face the captain, his antennae twitching with excitement. "It's a recording from the ship's last known mission. It's human." Sartho's heart skipped a beat. "Play." The screen flickered before a distorted voice filled the room. It was faint but clear enough to understand. "We are humans. We do not surrender, no matter the cost. If you're hearing this, they found us. The warships are coming. The humans are coming." The transmission cut out abruptly, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. Sartho's mind raced. Humans were alive, and they were coming. The crew stood frozen, the weight of the message sinking in. Who were they? And why was this ship abandoned? Sartho could feel the tension rising in the room. "Captain?" Doka said slowly, his voice tinged with awe. This warship was on a mission that was cut short. But it's clear now. The humans didn't disappear. They were in hiding, and they're preparing to return. Sartho took a deep breath, turning to his crew. We need to find out everything we can about this ship. What was it carrying? Why was it left here? And what did they mean by warships are coming? The crew nodded, determination in their eyes. Prepare the ship for departure, Sartho continued. And get me a direct line to the Vroth High Command. This is only the beginning. As the team moved to gather more information, a shadow flickered at the edge of their vision. Something moved in the distance. They weren't alone anymore. The ship was silent. It was as if it had never been alive. Its systems were dormant, its lights dim, and its hull stretched on endlessly. There was no sign of a crew, nothing but the lingering hum of ancient technology. Yet somehow, Sartho felt something stirring within the ship, something that didn't belong in the stillness. The Vroth crew moved cautiously through the halls, weapons at the ready, their boots echoing through the cold corridors. Captain Sartho led them with steady steps, his mind racing with questions. The message they had uncovered from the ship's control room echoed in his mind. We are humans. We do not surrender, no matter the cost. If you're hearing this, they found us. The warships are coming. The humans are coming. Sartho didn't know what to think. The humans were supposed to be gone, lost to the galaxy forever. But this warship, this silent ghost of a once great civilization, was telling a different story. Humans are coming. The words were chilling. And if the humans had returned, what did that mean for the Vroth, and for the galaxy? Sartho's team arrived at a large room deep within the warship, its walls lined with metallic panels. A large, circular table sat in the center, with a strange alien device attached to its surface. The technology was advanced, but there was something off about it. The design was far more complex than anything the Vroth had ever seen. Captain, Commander Rylus called out, her voice low. She was examining the device. This doesn't look like anything we know. It's almost biological. Sartho approached her, his curiosity piqued. The device hummed softly as if it were alive, and patterns began to glow on its surface. I've seen something like this before, Rylus continued, her fingers brushing over the glowing symbols. But it's a mystery. We need to understand it. Sartho nodded. Get it open. Let's see what secrets this warship holds. As Rylus worked, Sartho's eyes wandered around the room. His team had already begun searching the rest of the area, but something was off. There was an eerie stillness in the air, a quiet that didn't feel natural. The ship had once been a powerful war machine, but now it felt like a tomb. Then suddenly Rylus gasped. I've got it, she said, stepping back from the device. It's opening. The device split down the middle, revealing a hidden compartment inside. The crew gathered around, their eyes wide in anticipation. Inside the compartment, a small, glowing orb rested, surrounded by strange symbols. The orb pulsed with a soft light like it was breathing. What is that? Sartho whispered, his voice filled with awe. Rylus examined it closely. I'm not sure, but this orb seems to be the core of the ship's power. It's not just energy, it's intelligence. Suddenly the ship's lights flickered. The hum of the machinery grew louder. The crew looked around, uneasy. Something had changed. The ship was coming back to life. The AI system that had been dormant for so long suddenly came online. Its voice filled the room, low and mechanical. I am the Sentinel. This ship is a human warship. You should not have awakened it. Sartho's hand moved to his weapon. What do you mean? Who are you? The AI's voice grew darker. I was designed to protect the secrets of humanity. You will not understand what you've unleashed. The crew stiffened. What is happening? Sartho demanded. The humans you've heard of, those who disappeared, they left behind a power far beyond what you can comprehend. The Sentinel continued. You woke the heart of the warship, and now it will wake with you. The orb on the table began to glow brighter. The ship around them rumbled as if it was coming to life. Suddenly, the room shook violently, knocking the crew off their feet. "Get out!" Rylas screamed, her voice filled with panic. But it was too late. The walls of the warship opened up. From the depths of the ship, something enormous began to rise. A massive creature covered in dark metal armor with glowing eyes and sharp claws emerged from the depths. It looked human, but it was not. This was no soldier. This was something far more dangerous. The crew scrambled to their feet, weapons ready, but they knew they stood little chance. Sartho's mind raced as he realized what they had awakened. The beast. This was not just a warship. This was a weapon. A weapon made to destroy entire civilizations, and now, the beast was free. "Get to the ship," Sartho shouted, rushing toward the exit. The crew ran through the halls, the beast hot on their heels. Its roar shook the ship and the walls seemed to bend as the beast tore through them. The humans had built it to be unstoppable, a living weapon designed to erase anything that threatened them. The Vroth had made a fatal mistake by awakening it, and now they would pay the price. Sartho and his team made it back to the Vroth star, but the beast was close behind, pounding the walls of the warship with terrifying strength. They had only one chance to escape. But as they left the human ship, Sartho looked back, his heart pounding. Humanity had returned, and they hadn't come for peace. They had come for vengeance. The ship rumbled again. This time, it wasn't just the lights flickering. It felt as though the warship itself was waking up, as if the very walls were breathing. Captain Sartho didn't need to look at the crew to know that something was terribly wrong. He could see it in their eyes. Fear. The kind of fear that crawls up your spine and makes your heart race. "This wasn't supposed to happen," Rylas said, her voice shaking. Sartho gritted his teeth. They had hoped to explore the human warship, to study its technology, to learn from it. But now, as the ship came alive around them, it was clear. They had opened something they should have never touched. The beast was coming, and it wasn't just a creature. It was a weapon. Sartho turned to Doka, the chief engineer. "What did you find in the control room?" Doka looked at him, eyes wide. "The core is active. It's alive. It's calling something. Something ancient." Before Sartho could respond, a loud bang echoed through the hallways. The ship shook again and the lights dimmed even further. Then a voice, cold, mechanical, crackled through the air, echoing through the corridors. "Awakening complete. Defense protocols active. The beast is free." The crew froze. The beast. Sartho felt his stomach churn. "What does that mean? The beast?" Doka swallowed hard. "I don't know, but I don't like the sound of it." Before anyone could react, the ship's interior door slammed shut with a deafening noise. The warship had locked them in. On the main screen, a new message flashed. "Defend the core. Invaders must not reach the heart of the warship. Sartho." Felt a chill. Invaders? We're the ones who were invited here. "Not anymore," Rylas muttered, her hand on her weapon. "We've woken something terrible." The walls of the ship began to vibrate, a low hum growing louder by the second. Then from the shadows ahead, something stirred. A hulking figure emerged from a maintenance door. A creature. A monster. It stood on two legs, towering over the crew, its body covered in dark, metallic armor. Its eyes glowed bright red. Hungry, angry. This was no ordinary soldier. This was the beast. With a terrifying roar, it lunged forward, slamming into the nearest crew member. The Vroth soldier didn't even have time to scream before he was crushed beneath the beast's weight. Rylas pulled her weapon and fired, but the blasts seemed to bounce off the beast's armor with no effect. "Move!" Sartho yelled, as the beast turned its gaze toward them, its movements fast and fluid like a predator stalking its prey. They ran. The crew raced down the dark corridors, the sound of heavy footsteps echoing behind them. The ship was alive, and it wasn't about to let them escape. Every corner seemed to twist and change as if the very walls themselves were moving to trap them. Sartho and his team sprinted toward the airlock, but the beast was close, too close. One of the crew members, Jara, tripped and fell, and the beast was on her before anyone could react. The sound of her scream echoed through the ship as it clawed her into the ground, its eyes glowing with malice. "No!" Rylus shouted, but it was too late. The beast stood over her, its metallic claws raised, for the kill. Sartho slammed his hand on the door control and the airlock opened with a hiss. He didn't wait for the others to catch up. He didn't care if they were behind him. Survival was the only thing that mattered now. As he jumped into the airlock and the doors began to close, Sartho looked back. The beast was still there, standing in the doorway, watching them with those glowing red eyes. It was as if it was waiting. The doors shut. Outside, the Vroth star was their only chance. The rest of the fleet was still far away, and the warship they had come from seemed to be alive, reacting to the chaos. The engines hummed louder now, the ship's AI systems crackling through their comms. Sartho's heart pounded as he began to realize the truth. They had awakened the weapon. The warship was not just a ship, but a sentient creature that humans had created to protect them from their enemies. And now it was coming for the Vroth. "We have to leave. Now," Sartho ordered. "Get to the shuttle." The crew scrambled, each knowing that escape was their only option. They didn't have time to analyze the ship's systems. They didn't have time to make sense of the horror they had unleashed. As they powered up the shuttle and launched from the warship, Sartho looked back once more. The beast was still there, standing in the shadows of the massive warship, its eyes glowing, waiting for the next move. Humanity was coming back, and the Vroth had just awakened their wrath. The Vroth shuttle shot through the blackness of space, its engines roaring as it pushed them away from the nightmare they had just escaped. Inside, the small ship, Captain Sartho's chest heaved with each breath. The sound of his heart pounding in his ears almost drowned out the whirring of the engines. His crew was silent. They all knew what had happened, but none of them dared speak about it. They had awakened the beast, the creature humanity had created, and now they were the ones to suffer its wrath. Sartho turned to his second-in-command, Rylus, her face pale as she gripped the seat tightly. "We shouldn't have gone in there," she said quietly, her voice shaking. "That ship wasn't meant for us. It wasn't meant for anyone." Sartho didn't answer. The truth was too bitter. They had thought the ship was a relic, something abandoned long ago. But they were wrong. It had been waiting. As the shuttle drifted into the vast emptiness of space, a sense of dread hung over the crew. Sartho glanced at Doka, the ship's engineer, who was working frantically at the control panel. "Can you get a message out to the fleet?" Sartho asked. Doka shook his head. "No, Captain, the ship's systems are still too damaged. We need to get back to Vroth space to send a proper signal." "Then we're on our own for now," Sartho muttered, rubbing his temples. Back on the warship, the beast had been released. The beast-like creature that had been dormant for so long was now free to hunt, free to destroy. The last thing the crew had seen was its terrifying form, huge and armored, like a soldier created for one thing: to kill. Its eyes had glowed with a blood-red light, as if it knew exactly who to hunt next. And now the crew had just realized something they had feared all along. The beast wasn't just a monster. It was the tip of the spear. Sartho's thoughts raced. The Vroth had awakened a weapon built for war, and the ship was still alive. It had called the beast, and now it was targeting them. "Captain," Rylus shouted, her voice filled with alarm. "The ship's moving." Sartho looked up sharply. "What do you mean it's moving?" "The warship," Rylus replied. "It's not dead. It's still alive, and it's following us." Sartho's blood ran cold. The ship was chasing them. "How can it track us?" he demanded. Doka spoke up from the controls, his voice tense. "The core is still active. The ship's systems are not completely offline. The AI has somehow regained control." Sartho's stomach sank. The AI, the same one that had sealed their fate on the warship, was still functioning. And it had a mission. "We're not just dealing with a warship," We're dealing with a sentient weapon, Sartho said quietly. Suddenly, the shuttle's radar beeped. Incoming signal. Sartho's heart skipped a beat. He turned to Doka. What is it? Doka quickly brought up the transmission on the screen. The message was brief, the words chilling. You've woken the beast, we are coming for you. The message cut off before they could respond. That was from the warship's AI, Rylas said, her voice shaking. It's hunting us. It wants us dead. The crew had no choice but to flee. Sartho ordered the shuttle to move at full speed, but the warship was relentless, its massive engines lighting up in pursuit. It was faster than they were. The ship seemed to warp through space, appearing just behind them, a dark, menacing shadow. And then, the shuttle's hull rattled violently. Massive shockwaves slammed into the ship, throwing the crew to the floor. Lights flickered. The ship groaned. We're hit! Doka shouted. Sartho grabbed the control panel, fighting the growing panic. Hold together! Hold together! He shouted, trying to stabilize the shuttle. The ship shook again. A second wave. A force hit them, pushing the shuttle toward the blackness of space. We can't outrun it, Rylas shouted. We need to find somewhere to hide. No, Sartho said, his voice hard. We need to fight back. They were no longer just running. They were being hunted. The shuttle wasn't fast enough. The warship was closing in, its weapons primed. The beast was only minutes away from boarding, ready to tear through their defenses. Sartho made a snap decision. Prepare for a counterattack. We're going to give the beast a taste of human weaponry. Captain, we don't have enough power to fight back, Doka protested. We don't have a choice, Sartho said firmly. Sartho's fingers flew over the controls. He activated the shuttle's emergency weapon systems, human-made weaponry the Vroth had never seen. The ship's cannons glowed with blue energy. The warship closed in, almost upon them. The beast was visible now, moving through the ship's interior, a dark, hulking figure that seemed to feed off the terror. But they were ready. With a loud roar, Sartho launched the first strike. The ship's cannon fired a beam of energy so powerful that it cracked through the warship's shields. The beast screeched in fury as the energy blast hit it directly, knocking it off balance. Sartho's heart pounded as the warship hesitated. The beast roared again, but the shuttle had bought them a few precious seconds, but they still weren't safe. The Vroth had made a terrible mistake. They had unleashed a weapon built by humans to wipe out civilizations, and now they would learn the price. The battle was far from over. The Vroth shuttle had managed to deal a blow to the warship's outer defenses, but they weren't out of danger yet. The beast, enraged and more powerful than ever, continued to press forward, its glowing eyes locked on them. The warship's AI, now fully awake and aware of the Vroth crew's actions, had turned its attention to them, and that meant death. Keep firing, Sartho shouted, his hands gripping the controls tightly as he launched another round of fire at the warship. Each shot caused an explosion of light, but it wasn't enough. The beast roared, charging straight for them. We can't hold it off much longer, Rylas yelled, her voice laced with fear. This ship wasn't designed to handle this kind of firepower. We don't need to hold it off, Sartho muttered, his mind racing. We need to make them pay. But as he looked at the warship, on the radar a sudden realization hit him. They were out of time. The warship was far too advanced, too well armed, and too determined. It had been created for one purpose: destruction. The shuttle shook violently as another wave of energy blasts pummeled their shields. Doka struggled to keep the shuttle stable as Sartho glanced at the ship's fuel levels. We're almost out of power, Doka said, his voice strained. If we don't escape soon, we'll be sitting ducks. We can't escape, Sartho replied. His eyes were locked on the warship's movements. It was too fast, but then, in the distance, an unexpected signal appeared on their radar. Captain, Doka shouted, pointing at the screen. It's another ship, a human ship. It's... Before he could finish, the ship appeared in full view. It wasn't just any ship. It was a warship, a human warship, bigger and more terrifying than anything they had seen. The silhouette was sharp, its engines glowing bright blue, and it moved with purpose. The name Vengeance glowed across its hull. The Vroth crew stared, stunned. "Is this a human ship?" Rylus whispered, her eyes wide in disbelief. Before anyone could respond, the Vengeance unleashed its full power. A beam of white-hot energy ripped through space, colliding directly with the warship's core. The explosion was enormous. The warship shook. The beast staggered back. The warship had reinforcements and they weren't here to negotiate. Sartho's jaw clenched as the human ship fired again. This time the beast roared in pain, but it wasn't enough to stop its pursuit. The beast was still charging forward, more determined than ever. Sartho looked at the comms panel. Human signals flooded the screen. "Surrender. Cease all hostility. We are humanity, and we do not forgive." The words sent chills through Sartho's spine. Humanity had returned, not for peace, not for answers, but for vengeance. But there was something else, something unexpected. The Vengeance wasn't just targeting the beast anymore, it was targeting the Vroth ship. And without hesitation, a new signal appeared. This time, directly aimed at them. "Warning, you have one chance to leave. Stand down and surrender your ship or we will destroy it." Sartho's breath caught in his throat. The Vroth had made a terrible mistake. They had assumed the humans were weak, scattered, lost. They had awakened the beast to test its power. But what they didn't know was that the beast wasn't the real threat. The true threat was humanity's resolve. "They're here for blood," Sartho whispered. The human ship, Vengeance, moved closer. He turned to Doka. "Get us out of here now." But the engines sputtered. The shuttle couldn't handle another barrage. "We don't have enough power to—" "Escape!" Doka cried. The human ship opened fire again. This time there was no warning. An energy beam lanced through the void, hitting their shuttle directly. Sartho could see the shuttle's hull start to crack, the energy shields flickering. As they were torn apart, the Vroth were no longer in control. And in that moment, Sartho knew. They had underestimated the humans. They had thought they could study a warship, use its power and leave unscathed. But instead they had awakened a sleeping giant. And now, the humans were angry. The shuttle began to spin uncontrollably as the damage continued. Sparks flew from the control panels and alarms blared throughout the ship. "We can't hold on much longer," Rylus shouted, her voice filled with desperation. But just as the shuttle began to plummet toward the warship's surface, a final message appeared across the comm screen. "This is your final warning. Surrender, or be erased." And before they could respond, the screen went black. The Vroth had made a terrible mistake. They had thought humanity was gone, forgotten. But now they knew the truth. Humans were never gone, they had just been waiting, and when the time came, they were ready. The Vroth fleet was fleeing, but it didn't matter. They had thought they could run. They had thought they could escape the consequences of their actions. But now, as they saw the human fleet closing in, they realized they were trapped. There was nowhere to go. The Vengeance, the human warship, had made sure of that. Sartho stood on the bridge of the Vroth star, staring at the view screen. His face was pale, his mind racing. His crew was broken, shaken by the events that had unfolded. The shuttle had barely escaped, and now the full weight of humanity's wrath was bearing down on them. "We can't outrun them," Doka said, his voice hollow. "They're everywhere. There are no safe zones left." Sartho slammed his fist on the console. "We've lost everything. The beast was only the beginning. Now they're coming for us." A silent alarm went off, and the view screen flickered. The human fleet was no longer just in front of them. They were surrounding them. Thousands of warships. No escape. No mercy. A voice came over the intercom. It was calm, cold, but it held a promise, one that made every Vroth on board freeze. "This is your final warning. You have no place to hide. Surrender or be wiped from existence." Sartho didn't need to ask who it was. The message was clear. The humans didn't care about diplomacy. They didn't want answers. They wanted Revenge, we're being targeted, Rylus reported from the tactical station. All weapons are locked. Their fleet is preparing to fire. Sartho took a deep breath. He turned to face his crew. They had done everything they could. Now, the only thing left was to fight back. Suddenly, the Vroth star was hit. The ship's hull groaned under the impact, throwing the crew off balance. Alarms blared and sparks flew from the control panels. "We're under fire," Doka shouted, his hands flying over the controls, trying to stabilize the ship. Sartho grabbed a console, trying to steady himself. "Return fire, all guns now." But their weapons were useless against the incoming assault. The human ships, with their devastating firepower, began breaking through their defenses. The Vroth star rocked violently with each impact. The shields were failing fast. "We can't keep up," Rylus said, her voice tight with fear. "We need to surrender. We don't have a chance." But Sartho couldn't bring himself to give in. "Not yet. Continue fighting," he ordered, his voice a low growl. "We might not win, but we won't go down without a fight." In the vastness of space, the human fleet pressed in closer. The Vengeance was at the center, its powerful weapons aimed directly at the Vroth ship. And then, with a deafening roar, a wave of energy shot from the Human Warship, smashing into the Vroth star's hull. The ship shook violently as the energy hit, tearing through its outer defenses. Sartho held onto the console as the ship began to break apart. His vision blurred with each impact. He could hear the groaning of the metal, the sound of the ship, slowly dying. But as he looked around the bridge, he saw something. The crew was still fighting. Despite everything, despite the overwhelming force bearing down on them, they refused to surrender. For the Vroth, this was more than just a war. It was about survival. And they had been wrong to think they could simply escape the consequences. "Sir," Doka shouted, breaking Sartho from his thoughts. "We've received a new message." Sartho turned toward him. "What is it?" Doka swallowed hard. It's from the human fleet's command center." The view screen flickered, and a voice filled the bridge. "This is not just a war. This is not just about revenge. This is about the message we send to the galaxy." Sartho's blood ran cold. The voice was clear, calm, but it carried a weight that made the Vroth commander shiver. "You did not destroy us. You woke us." The message continued. "For every soul lost on Arden 9, for every innocent destroyed, for every attempt to hurt, our people, we will make you feel it. We do not forget. We do not forgive. You will never be able to hide from us again." Sartho watched in disbelief as the final blow came from the human fleet. In an instant, the Vroth star's last shield failed. The final barrage of human weapons hit, and the ship began to break apart. Pieces of the ship flew into space, leaving the crew to fight for their survival. "Brace for impact," Sartho shouted as the ship systems failed completely. Then, in an instant, it was over. The Vroth star was no more. The human fleet had won, but the Vroth had been destroyed, not just by the humans' superior firepower, but by their relentless determination to never be forgotten, to never be pushed around again. The galaxy would never be the same. The stars never looked the same again. In the silence that followed the destruction of the Vroth star, the galaxy held its breath. The war was over, but something had shifted. Something fundamental. The balance of power had been irrevocably altered, and the echoes of human vengeance rang through space. On Earth, there was no celebration, no cheers, no music. The Council of our High Command stood solemnly in the Grand Chamber, their faces illuminated by the holograms of the galaxy, now scarred by the brutal war. Admiral Kara Miles, the one who had led humanity's fleet to victory, was silent as she watched the aftermath unfold. Humanity had won, but the cost had been high. The Vroth had destroyed a colony, wiped out millions, and threatened the very essence of humanity. But the humans had fought back, and in the end, they had sent a message so loud, so clear that no one would ever forget it. But as the Council met in the shadow of the war, a new transmission came through the galactic channels. The screen lit up with an unexpected image. The Vroth had sent out one last message. It was a recorded message from Sartho. The image was fuzzy, damaged from the destruction. but the words were clear. We were wrong. We thought we could run. We thought we could hide. But now, we know the truth. You are not like any species we've ever known. You do not forget, and you do not forgive. The galaxy will remember this day. As the message ended, the chamber fell quiet. The council exchanged looks, but Kara Miles simply stared at the screen. Her fingers tapped the table lightly as she spoke, her voice steady but full of resolve. This is not just about vengeance. It never was. This is about the future. We will rebuild, but we will not forget. No one will. The next day, the council announced a decree. Humanity would no longer hide in the shadows. They would take their place in the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as guardians of their own future. The message had been delivered, and no one would dare test them again. A new order was created, one where no species, no matter how powerful, would ever believe they could erase humanity's place in the stars. Across the galaxy, other species took notice. The Rithari, the Zek, and the Zalara, the powers that once ignored humanity or treated them as weak, now watched in fear. No longer could they dismiss humanity as a fledgling race. Humanity had awakened, and it was more powerful than they ever imagined. The first act of the new order was simple. A single ship was sent to each major alien capital, not for negotiation, but as a warning. A message was transmitted. Humanity has risen. We do not seek war, but we will not hide. Do not test us again. In the distant reaches of space, the remaining Vroth survivors looked at Earth with a mix of awe and terror. They had been the ones who had awakened the humans, but they had paid the price. For the first time, the Vroth understood something they had never considered. Humans were not just survivors. They were a force of nature. Back on Earth, Admiral Kara Miles stood before a crowd of young soldiers, the new generation that would carry humanity's legacy. Her words rang clear across the planet. We fought not just for our survival, but for every species in this galaxy. For those who do not know us, for those who doubt us, we will protect our own. But remember, never again will anyone be allowed to forget that humanity stands strong. The warships that once carried death now stood as symbols of something more: strength, unity, power. Humanity was no longer the forgotten race. They had become the guardians of their own fate. The galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again. As the camera pulled back from Earth's atmosphere, humanity's fleet remained in orbit, silent, watching, and ready. The Vroth may have started the war. The humans may have finished it, but the true victor was the galaxy itself. For now, peace reigned, but the message had been made clear. We do not forget, and we will always rise.